Hello everybody, welcome to week 3. I wanted to make a brief announcement here. I first and foremost just want to say I apologize. I'm not sure exactly what happens, but it appears that my announcements last week were not posting through to Canvas. It's not the end of the world. You guys were able to figure things out, I think. You kind of got through, assignments were posted. Well done. That said, this week, a couple of things, kind of a big week, right? So first and foremost, you have your midterm this week. This does not open until Thursday, 5/28. It's due on Sunday at midnight, but you still have a few days to do that, but it's not open yet, so keep that in mind. This is going to be comprehensive, looking at everything from chapters 0, which is the intro chapter, chapter 1, 2, 3, so chapter 0, chapter 1, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 9, and chapter 10, right? So all of the material through this week. It's going to be our intro stuff, measurement stuff, bioenergetics. The exercise metabolism stuff is absolutely going to be on the midterm. If you recall in week 2, we didn't have any questions from that chapter on the quiz. It will be featured prevalently in the midterm, so make sure you have gone through that material. It also will include the cardio responses and the respiratory responses from this week, so make sure that you're up to date on that. I would highly recommend you take the quiz from week 3 before you complete your midterm, if you are able to do so. Also, our first discussion is happening this week. The initial replies are due Wednesday on 5/27. Make sure that you read through the announcement, read through the instructions on Canvas. But talk about your case study you've been going through. This is your chance. You're the expert. You go and talk about what it is that happens when a hiker is going on a trail run or something like that. Give us the rundown. So talk about these things. If you have already completed it, totally fine. If you want to include information from this week, from last week, totally up to you. Whatever seems most relevant in your case. So lastly, case study 3 is due this week as well, right? So again, focus in on the material of the week as you're completing these. So focus this week on discussion of the cardiac and respiratory responses that are occurring with your given sport. I wanted to lastly just make a quick note about cells with multiple nuclei. So a few of you reached out with this question. There was a question on the quiz. Not everyone got it, but there was a question on the quiz. Was it true or false that skeletal muscle cells are the only cells with multiple nuclei in the human body? This is not entirely true, right? It was listed as true, but that's incorrect. However, I want to point a couple things out. So there are a few types of cells in the body that have multiple nuclei. Osteoclasts, immune cells, cells in the placenta. There's several different places where you can see that. Even cardiac muscle can have multiple nuclei. However, it's usually very, very minimal, right? Cardiac muscle sometimes has two nuclei per skeletal muscle cell, right? For cardiac muscle cells. When you look at placenta, when you look at these other things, like they have multiple nuclei, but it's maybe on the order of 5 or 10. Skeletal muscle can have hundreds, even thousands of skeletal muscle or of nuclei per skeletal muscle cell. And this kind of makes sense. We haven't really gotten into skeletal muscle structure yet, but you all should have seen some of this from anatomy. This is the location of mitochondria. This is where all of the aerobic ATP production is occurring. One of the adaptations to exercise training is this increase in cellular nuclei. As the as the myocytes kind of combine together and form new muscle cells, in this process of hyperplasia and hypertrophy, you gain more and more nuclei. This is really interesting, and where this gets into some kind of more modern exercise sciences. This is kind of the cellular basis for muscle memory, if you will. Even after a period of detraining, you still retain those muscle cells. So when you have hypertrophy, the muscle gets bigger. A lot of that is swelling. It's stuff full of more stuff. It's not actually more muscle cells. But when I get a larger muscle, right, gets stronger, has more capacity for contraction, etc., a lot of that is controlled by how many nuclei are located within that muscle. So if I go through a period of detraining and I lose muscle, those muscles shrivel. When you atrophy, it's not necessarily muscle wasting, although that can happen in severe, malnutrition, disease, and these other sorts of things. But you still retain those nuclei. And so even if the cell is smaller, that muscle is smaller, it still can have higher potential for contraction, for energy production. You can retain kind of just that contractility, that, ease. You've built those neural pathways. You've built that, quote unquote muscle memory, and that stays with you. And that's pretty fascinating. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. If you got that question on your quiz and you got it wrong, I'll adjust it for you. But let me know how things are going this week. Have a great, I hope everybody had a, safe, happy Memorial Day, and, good luck on your midterms.